ACB is making a lot of noise, and they have their 54th event this weekend in Manchester, and it's headlined by Mamed Khalidov against our old-time friend. It's been a while since we talked to Big Slow, Luke Barnatt. He's headlining the card, and he's joining us now via the magic of Skype. There he is. Let's go, Big Slow. How are you, Luke?
Hey, I'm very well, Ariel. How are you, mate?
Sorry for keeping you waiting. Ali likes to talk a lot. I'm sorry about that.
I thought I liked to talk. We can tell that guy's a manager. Jesus Christ. I couldn't shut him up. I was like, come on.
Well, look, people get excited when they're on the program. They like to take advantage of the time, and I appreciate that. So right now, you're actually joining us from Malaga, Spain, correct?
Correct, yeah. Andalusia, yeah, in the southern part of Spain. So,
unbelievable.
I moved here a year and a half ago, so I've been out here a year and a half. I have a gym out here, enjoying the sunny weather, and I live on the beach, so everything's good.
Why did you move there, of all places? There's not exactly an MMA scene there.
Well, there is now that I'm here. There definitely is. It's growing, but for sure, it's a growing scene. I decided to move here because I was in San Diego, with training with Phil Davis at Alliance for a couple of years. Then after I left the UFC and I came back to England, I got married to my wife, and we were like, kind of missed the sun. The sunniest place we could find was Spain, so we decided to move, and 2 months later we moved to Spain, and we've been here ever since.
How is life outside of the UFC for you? I mean, you've been active, you fought for different promotions, not one singular promotion, but in terms of, making a living, getting interesting fights, progressing your career, of course, I think everyone wants to be with the big show. Are you happy? Are you content with the way things have gone post-UFC thus far? You're undefeated as well, which is also notable.
Yeah, 100%. You were saying it then, that like the more promotions, the better. Now there is a lot more promotions, especially over here in Europe. Obviously, I won the title with Venator and did quite well there. I had a fight in England. I also just recently fought in Romania. I'm searching the globe to find fights. It can be difficult when you're not in the big show. There's not that, it's quite hard to find fights that are that interesting, if you want to put it that way. But there's definitely availability now where you can make a living. I'm making a very comfortable living doing what I do. Now I'm actually probably more comfortable than I was when I was in the UFC, because the expenses being in the UFC and living in California and training out there was so high, and there was such a high expectation of you. When you take that off you, and now I'm fighting in Europe, and I get to pick the promotions I'm fighting for, the time scale. I don't have Joe. It was Joe, obviously it isn't anymore, but Joe calling you going, Luke, we want you to fight in 2 months, or we want you to do this. I'm the boss,
Sure.
I get to pick. So it's almost like I'm shopping for fights now rather than waiting to get picked off the shelf, So I have a lot more control over my life, and I'm very content with that. And I think I'm a lot happier, and I'm a lot more centered than I've ever been previously right now with my fight career.
Well, that is great to hear. Does that mean, though, that you have no interest in going back? Do you like this lifestyle and just picking your fights, being your own boss, and this will be the norm for your career at this point?
It's one of those things where it's definitely still an option. Everyone keeps saying to me after I beat Mamed Khalidov, I'm going back to the UFC. And yeah, that will be an option. I'll definitely be ringing up Dana and saying, right, let's talk and see what they want to say. But it's not the only option anymore for me. It's not like, right, okay, beat Mamed Khalidov, I'm ranked high enough, let's go to the UFC. If it works and it suits my lifestyle and everything's great and they're interested and the rest of it, then yeah, I'll definitely be looking to do it. But there's always staying with ACB, there's KSW in Poland, there's a lot of other organizations that are really growing and coming up now.
So, of course, you had that bizarre fight against Mayhem Miller that never came to fruition. It was somewhat of a bizarre booking because we didn't expect Mayhem to come back, and then he misses weight and doesn't end up fighting you, and it was just kind of a mess of a situation. I would still say, maybe not name-wise, but skill-wise, and the kind of test he presents, this is the biggest fight for you since you've left the UFC. Is that accurate?
100% accurate, yeah, for sure.
Did you seek this fight, or did they come to you with this fight? Because Mamed is one of the best middleweights in the world, regardless of promotion.
Yeah, for sure. I work with ACB as a commentator, so I've been out there all over Russia. I've been traveling across Russia commentating for them. I think I've done 9 shows now in total. And there was whispers of Mamed Khalidov coming to ACB 6 months ago. And when those whispers were going around, ACB were also trying to get me to fight. Not Mamed, but they were trying to get me to fight. And I said, listen, I really like commentary. It's what I want to do. I want to build my career in this. I think I'm good at it, blah, blah, blah. But if you put Mamed Khalidov on the table, I'll fight for ACB. It's the only fight I'll take. I don't want anyone else. I don't want to fight for the title. I don't want out. I'll fight that guy. And then a couple months later, they were trying to make it happen at the end of the year in December. And he had to put it back for some reason. I can't remember what it was. And now we've got it in March this weekend in Manchester, of all places. So I definitely seeked it out, and I eventually got what I wanted. So, I'm looking forward to taking advantage of it.
But this is a one-fight deal with them?
Yeah, it's a one-fight deal. It's a one-off. Same with Mamed. They're both one-off fight deals. They have with my contract, they have the opportunity to counter whatever offer I get given, so they can come back and match. So, if they want to keep me, they can counter, and I have to take that into consideration.
And so, since you've worked for them as a commentator and you've been following them, I remember we've actually featured some of their shows. They do a great job of giving us, the YouTube broadcasts and all that stuff. Initially, it was a lot of fighters that aren't exactly household names. A lot of Russian fighters, great fighters, but not people who the North American fans recognize. But as of late, they've done a very good job. I think they've been very aggressive in signing fighters who are looking for a home, fighters from the UFC, Takei Mizugaki, Bubba Jenkins, as I mentioned, Zach Makovsky. There's just Khalidov. They've been very aggressive in terms of just not being a Russian promotion, just featuring Russian-born fighters or European fighters there. It feels to me like they're really trying to make an effort to become this, global dominant brand. When did you notice that shift, and is there more to it? Was there a point where they're like, okay, now's our time that we're going to try to go after these free agents? How can you explain this? Because it definitely feels like it's changed in the last few months.
Well, there was definitely a shift. I couldn't tell you the reason for that, but I can tell you my point of view. They're actually Chechenian or Chechenian, however you want to say it. It's a promotion from Chechnya and Grozny. So they were actually originally based out of Grozny, and they just did shows in Grozny.
Okay.
And then I believe Ahmed MMA, they do a show there as well, and there was a lot of conflicts. So they decided to go out into the whole of Russia. And now they've been, when I started working for them, the first show I did was in Moscow. But since then I've been all over. I went to Sochi, where they had the Olympics. I went to I've been literally all over the country.
Right.
They're doing a show in Tajikistan next. Wow. So they're really branching out in Russia. But then after they got success moving out in Russia, they linked up and tried to do it in Europe and come over to the West, if you want to call it the West of Europe. And they did a show in Glasgow recently. They actually did a show in California where they came over, and they did that show in 3 weeks. They put it together. We're going to do a show in California, and they just, boom, had a show. And now I believe they can see the possibility of growth through growing in Russia. They're very, very big now in Russia. And now they're trying to, like you said, they're trying to dominate. They're trying to take over. They're coming over to Europe. And the smaller promotions, they're not small promotions, but the small compared to ACB, like Bama and Cage Warriors, they can't keep up with the sort of names, like you said, that ACB are bringing in, the money they have behind them. And they're really going after all of the free agents they could possibly get, because they're trying to build, and they're trying to become, I believe, a competitor at the highest level. They're not interested in just being one of the boys. They want to be up there.
Who owns them?
It's owned by a family. I don't want to say their names incorrectly, but I believe it's Marabek. I can't say his second name. Marabek and Zyrabek is the son.
Okay.
They've got a huge love for jiu-jitsu, like an absolute. They're in love with jiu-jitsu. They actually have a jiu-jitsu tournament as well, ACB BJJ, and they fly in the best jiu-jitsu competitors in the world into a stadium. They fight, and there's about 20 people there, and they just watch. They love it. They're absolutely obsessed with it.
That's amazing.
They're also now doing kickboxing as well, very similar to Bellator. So you've got ACB Jiu-Jitsu, ACB Kickboxing, and ACB MMA. And last year, they had an event every 2 weeks in different places. This year, so far, I think it's been every 3 weeks. They've had an event somewhere. So this family, Zyrabek and Marabek and his son Zyrabek, it's full time. They love it. They're on it, and they just, they're feeding families, and they put this organization together, and they're getting fighters great fights and putting on great cards.
If you don't mind me asking, do you know where their money comes from? How do they have these? This kind of means to put on all these promotions and fights?
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't know. I wouldn't know, and that's the question.
Well, I know, the Fertitas Casino, I'm always curious where it actually comes from.
I couldn't sell you oil or something.
Okay.
I don't know. I don't know.
Fair enough. But they treat you well. I mean, as far as being, you never fought for them, but as far as being a commentator, I've never been to an event, but it seems like it's, run quite nicely. The production is nice. You're happy with them. You feel like they have the potential to actually make noise.
Yeah, otherwise I wouldn't be fighting for them.
Sure.
Like I said, I've done 9 shows. I've done 9 shows all over the world. The setup has always been fantastic. They've always treated me very, very well. And the thing that people, you said it yourself, the level of talent they have in Russia and in Chechnya and their gym and everything they have, the fights are actually incredible. They're incredible fights. One of the best fights I saw was back when it was in Moscow. The first event I ever did was a guy named Petr Yan versus Mamed Khalidov, where they're now having a rematch of that fight because it was so close. They're having a rematch, April 15th. But the level of fights is amazing, but you just don't know the names. Now they're bringing in the names along with the level of fights that they have. I just think it's going to be a real good mixture for the fans. It's going to be going to really pump them up, and people are going to love it. And I commentate along an English guy called Brian Lacey, and we've got a good relationship. So I always enjoy the trips. We always have fun, and the commentary's good. And when I'm not commentating now, they have Frank Mir commentating as well.
Oh, so
they brought in Frank Mir as a commentator as well.
He'll be doing the card on Saturday?
Yeah, he'll be doing the card in Manchester. So it'll be Frank Mir and Brian Lacey commentating for the event, and we kind of like shape around with a commentary together, all three. So he did the one in California, and we moved back and forth.
And how can fans watch it?
It's on you. They have a YouTube channel, ACB. You just put it in on YouTube. It's Absolute Championship Berkut is the actual name of the organization.
What does Berkut mean?
ACB MMA.
What does Berkut mean?
I think it means eagle.
Okay.
But I don't know that for
okay.
a fact. They love eagles in Russia.
Okay.
They love them. They're everywhere.
Khabib, the eagle.
ACB, the logo. Yeah, there's the logo of ACB is a big eagle, so I'm guessing it's going to be an eagle. But yeah, on the YouTube channel, it's freely streamed online. And I think a couple of the MMA websites are picking it up. But they do have some TV deals in some countries. So if you're coming from, I believe in Poland, it's on Polsat or something like that. So you have to go to their Twitter and all the rest of it to find out.
What's the biggest difference between the Luke Barnatt that I'm talking to now and the one who fought Mark Munoz?
I definitely say, like we said, is I'm centered. I don't like to use that word because I sound like a yoga guy.
I like the word,
but like
nice word.
I'm very happy. I'm in a very good place in my life. I feel like I've trained harder than I've ever trained before for this fight, but it's been far easier, far more relaxing. I have my environment, my gym, my guys. I've stopped looking outwards for answers to my problems in MMA, and I'm starting looking inward and started developing me as a person and as a fighter. And I feel like that's done leaps and bounds for me. And I just feel in such a great place going into this fight. I feel like it's my time. I feel like Mamed Khalidov is, like we said, he is the best fighter at middleweight never to go to the UFC. He's the best middleweight in Europe, has been for a very, very long time. And I believe now I'm the second best unsigned middleweight in the world. I think Mamed's number 2. So I feel like it's the biggest fight outside the UFC you can have at middleweight. Yeah. And I get to bring him out of Poland to Manchester, to my hometown, where I had a fight of the night performance against Andrew Craig last time I fought in that arena. Yep. I just feel like it's built for me, this event. Everything's built for me. The timing's perfect. I feel fantastic. I've got no injuries. My weight is great. I just feel centered. I feel like it's all coming together and it's going to be perfect on Saturday.
That is great to hear. Well, by the way, what's the name of your team out there in Spain?
The name of the team is Lilius Barnatt, because what's happened is we have a gym in Malaga, Spain. It's actually in Torremolinos. And when I moved out here, I teamed up with a guy named Santeri Lilius, who's a 25-year-old Finnish black belt under Hodger Gracie. He's the youngest ever black belt that Hodger's ever given out. And we teamed up, and he covers the jiu-jitsu and I cover the MMA, and we're kind of doing like a Winkle-John kind of thing or whatever, so the name is both of our last names put together. And we're actually going to be starting doing like summer camps and all sorts of cool things for people to come out and do. I've managed to get 3 UFC vets to sign up to do a summer camp with me. So they'll be flying out from England, having a couple of weeks out in the sun, training people and putting on like a big seminar thing in the south of Spain. So there's a lot to come from the gym as well in that aspect.
Any appearances by your old friend Chael? Do you still speak to him?
We do, and I speak to him quite a bit. And the only time we could have made it work is in September. He's actually flying over to Finland to do a grappling tournament. I can't remember exactly which one. I think it's the ADCCs. And I'm actually flying to Oregon for a friend's wedding.
Wow.
So I'm going to his home.
Wow.
And he's coming to Europe exactly the same week.
Oh my gosh.
So we're going to miss each other. So, but yeah, it would have been great, and he could have maybe come out to Spain. But maybe one day. I think the only person that might make it out there soon is Kelvin Gastelum, because he hablas the Espanol, and he might come out. And Enrique Wasabi, who from the Ultimate Fighter that fought Sage Northcutt, he lives an hour and a half, 2 hours from me, and he comes down and trains every now and then, and he's good friends with Kelvin too. So we're all going to hook up and have a beach party.
Not just a big weekend for you, a big weekend for Kelvin as well, as he meets Vitor Belfort on Saturday. So you both are in action. It is a great card. I have taken note. ACB 54, Supersonic, Luke Barnatt versus Mamed Khalidov. Some other names that you may have heard of on this card. Vinny Magalhães is fighting, so I guess that whole retirement thing didn't stick with Vinny, but that's kind of typical. Saul Rogers versus Pat Healy, right? We know Saul. Mike Wilkinson, who you've seen on this show. David Mitchell is also on the card. I'm looking for names. Any other names that fans... Oh, Bubba Jenkins is on the card. He's on this card, Bubba Jenkins. Robert Whiteford against...
Bubba Jenkins is coming one week late. Yeah, last week notice he's jumped on the card just as he's got signed. Yeah.
Robert Whiteford versus Nam Fan.
Brendan Lockhain is taken... Brendan Lockhain's taken on Michael Wilkinson.
Yeah.
They both were in the UFC, and there's actually a rematch. They fought in the UFC before. They're both from Manchester. So that's like one of the big fights on the card as well. 2 UFC vets taking on a rematch.
There's like 500 fights on this card. It's unbelievable.
There's 22.
22.
Total.
Unbelievable. And the one that I really like, Nam Fan against Robert Whiteford, that's a lot of fun.
Yeah, there's a crazy matchmaking. When these fights were announced, the one by one, I only knew of my fight. I didn't know any other fights on the card, and they were announcing them one by one, and it was just getting ridiculous. It was getting stupid, you know. So there is a lot of fun fights on the card. There's probably 10 really fun fights. And then there's all the local guys that no one knows yet, but they're the British guys coming up, and they've all been picked, and they're all good guys, and they wouldn't be on the card if they weren't talented. So I think from start to finish, it's going to be a hell of a card.
Well, I wish you the best, Luke. Great to catch up. I'm happy to hear that everything's going great. I've actually been to the south of Spain before, and you picked a great part of the world to live. It's absolutely beautiful there, and it's cool to see that you're building something from the ground up over there. Obviously, follow you on Instagram and all that stuff, so I've been checking it out. It's really cool. So nothing but the best for you and your wife, and I look forward to the fight on Saturday. I will be watching. Good luck in the fight, and then we'll talk about it afterwards and see what cards you have to play with after a big win over Mamed Khalidov.
Exactly. Once I beat the man, then I think it's East versus West. And once West conquers East, then I've got all the cards are in my hand, and I can do what I want. And maybe you can tell Ali that the guy wouldn't keep quiet. What's his name? That manager,
Ali Abdelaziz.
After this weekend, when I beat that Ali Abdelaziz, after I beat Mamed Khalidov this weekend, 185 Rashad Evans sounds good to me.
Oh,
that could get me back in the UFC.
Wow.
That would be a fight that would definitely I would gravitate to. So that'd be interesting for me.
That's the thing I always appreciated about you, Luke. You always had a plan, one step ahead. You're thinking, matchmaking. That sounds like a lot of fun. All right, we'll keep that in mind. Thank you, Luke. All the best.
Nice one, Ariel. Take it easy.
There he is, Big Slow. Luke Barnatt returns to action this Saturday, March 11th, ACB 54, Supersonic against Mamed Khalidov. Big fight for him, big fight for the promotion. They're doing some very interesting things.